It has been 1 month since the U.S. and Israel launched their first missiles at Iran, killing the supreme leader and many more top Iranian officials. Since then, thousands of people have been killed and many countries have been impacted by the conflict, from the Gulf states to Lebanon and regions as far away as off the coast of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean, where the U.S. struck an Iranian ship. While strikes continue, Washington says it's holding talks with Iran, with Pakistan acting as an intermediary.
US-Israeli strikes have once again hit targets deep inside Iran. This footage from Iranian media shows rescue workers searching for survivors after a residential area in the city of Gherardi was hit early on Saturday. The Iranian Red Crescent say that civilians are bearing the brunt of the attacks.
Since last night, the Zionist and American regime has bombed 80 residential areas. 80 residential areas where people were living. Our schools, 600 schools, have been damaged or destroyed so far.
What began as a series of limited strikes on the 28th of February has spiraled into a regional confrontation. This map traces the past month of attacks and counterattacks. The orange dots show strikes carried out by the US and Israel, the green, Iran and its allies. Now new players are stepping in. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militia has said it is now officially entering the war.
Our armed forces, with God's help and reliance upon Him, have carried out their first military operation. This operation involved a salvo of ballistic missiles targeting sensitive military objectives of the Israeli enemy in the south of occupied Palestine.
Israel said that it intercepted a missile from Yemen. These missiles over Tel Aviv were part of Iran's latest counterattack. At least one person was killed. Israel has vowed to ramp up its attacks.
Prime Minister Netanyahu and I warned the Iranian terror regime to stop the missile fire directed at Israel's civilian population. Despite the warnings, the firing has continued, and therefore IDF strikes in Iran will escalate and expand to additional targets and areas that assist the regime in building and operating weapons used against Israeli civilians. They will pay heavy and increasing prices for this war crime.
But even as attacks continue, President Trump says that talks are in progress.
We're negotiating now, and it'd be great if we could do something, but they have to open it up. They have to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
But in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran continues to exert tight control over maritime traffic. This has led to rapidly increasing global oil prices and leaves little indication that a clear path out of the conflict is emerging.
Carlo Gherardi is the Norwegian Refugee Council's regional director for Europe and Asia. He told us more about conditions inside Iran.
The conditions are extremely difficult. We have 100 staff on the ground, and like you say, the internet's been down for the last month, so it's difficult to communicate. People are exhausted, people are scared, people are traumatized. Bombs continue to fall on a daily basis. More than 3 million people have left Tehran for areas outside where they feel like they might be safer. But we also know that many others can't leave and are in collective sites if their houses have been destroyed or if their businesses have been destroyed. And the longer this goes on for, the more desperate the situation becomes.
Tell us a little bit more about this internal displacement. As you say, many residents of Tehran have fled, perhaps to more rural areas if they can. Why are there those who feel like they can't leave? Is it the fact that they can't get to a safer place and find the support they need outside of the city?
There's always a mixture of reasons and variables that people use to make their decisions. For some, they won't be able financially to move. For some, there will be personal reasons why they want to stay where they are. And of course, what many people don't know is that Iran hosts more than 4 million Afghan refugees. 1.4 million of those are undocumented. And for that population group, it's extremely perilous to move, and you face increased risks of arrest and detention. So there are different reasons why people aren't moving. There are different reasons why people have decided to move. We've also seen and heard about many people who left Tehran thinking this would be a matter of days, and then are now forced to come back for different reasons and find themselves again under the bombs in Tehran as well.
And just to follow up on the Afghan refugees, presumably returning to Afghanistan also poses difficulties, since that country might have its own political and economic challenges as well?
Correct. And of course, people in Iran from Afghanistan fled Afghanistan seeking international protection and safety. So for them, the risk of going back is significant. Many of them are starting to have to make that choice. We work in Afghanistan as well. The international community is trying to be prepared in case we see many going back. But inside Iran, for those Afghan refugees, as I said, it can be extremely dangerous just to move, just to become more visible. And then they can find themselves actually being sent back to a very difficult situation in Afghanistan, which is also seeing its own conflict and crises on top of everything else.
I want to just talk about the country as a whole. We've talked a little bit about people in Tehran moving to other regions. Are there other hot zones or cities or regions that are facing particular acute problems in terms of internal movement?
Well, unlike last June, what we've seen this time in this conflict is that the bombing is across the whole of Iran. In cities in the north, in cities in the south. We've had reports from our local partners of significant displacement in the south. So this is really impacting the whole country. And people are trying to understand where they can be safer, where they can move to. But the reality is that you don't know where the next missiles are going to strike. You don't know where you're going to be safe. And that's why people are so tired and so scared, because nowhere for them at the moment feels safe.
I'd like to pivot to another country in the region now, Lebanon. Israel's missile attacks have forced the movement of Lebanese across the south of the country. What is the picture there?
It's a desperate picture in Lebanon. 20% of the population has had to flee. That's more than 1 million people in a country which is very small geographically. 130,000 plus are now in collective sites, often displaced now more than once, seeking very basic assistance. And the situation is extremely alarming in Lebanon.
And how much is Beirut impacted? Are we seeing many residents leave that city?
We've seen localized displacement in Beirut. We haven't yet seen any mass displacement away from the city. Of course, many of the people from the south who had to flee their villages and flee the towns in the south have fled to Beirut, but then especially southern Beirut has been hit extremely hard. So people are having to move around inside the city, leave the city, come back and try to rebuild what they can or seek assistance wherever they can.
And Carlo, I know this is not a focus area of the Norwegian Refugee Council, but I do want to ask you about the Gulf region. What do you know in terms of people leaving because of Iran's attacks, and to what extent can they, especially when commercial flights are still quite limited across the region?
Yeah, I mean, those missiles and drones from Iran into the Gulf states are concerning everyone, and the migrant populations, the host populations in those countries are also living in fear. And the concern for us especially is the attacks on civilian infrastructure, the attacks on buildings which house civilians, the attacks on energy infrastructure, which could have consequences for millions of people in the region on top of the millions that are already impacted. And as you say, as the international system, international airports are impacted, it leaves very little choice for many people who are stuck in these countries.
Carlo Gherardi of the Norwegian Refugee Council, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.
Joining us from Tel Aviv is Akiva Eldar, a political analyst and contributor to Israel's Haaretz newspaper. Welcome. Akiva, 1 month into this war, let's start with the big picture. How would you assess where things stand?
I think that there are two different perspectives, two maybe even Israeli society. According to the polls, the majority of the Israeli people, even after 1 month, according to what was published this weekend, they believe that the war is fully justified, both in the Iranian frontier as well as in Lebanon. And this was also the case in the war in Gaza that started almost 2.5 years ago. So normalization and normal situation is to run to the bomb shelters, or if you're lucky, to your safe room. People are getting used to it. But on the other hand, there are people in Israel that right now are on their way to demonstrate in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, in Beersheba against the war, even though they know that on their way there, or lifting their slogans or crying against the war, they can be targeted by another Iranian missile.
Now, Israel has been striking Lebanon, as you mentioned. What is the strategy there? Is it primarily to weaken Hezbollah?
It is more than just targeting Hezbollah. Netanyahu promised 8 months ago that the Galilee is going to be heavens, rows of garden, and garden rows. And right now, what Israel is doing, both in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in the West Bank, is trying to get more territory. The equation is the more territories you have, the more security you can offer the people of Israel. We wanted to believe, Netanyahu wanted us to believe that after the last round of escalation, the Galilee will be quiet. He asked the people who left for more than 2 years, left their homes, that they are safe and they can go back. And now what they found out is that in the meantime, the government was not even working on offering them real bomb shelters and a safe haven. So what I see right now is that Netanyahu is trying to gain more time, Melissa. And the name of the game is not, as Secretary of State Henry Kissinger used to say, Israel does not have real foreign relation or foreign strategy or military strategy. It's about domestic politics. And what Netanyahu is interested is to gain more time, so to put on hold his trial for corruption and to get ready for the elections in a time of war. In a time of war, people don't have the appetite for changing a regime. And right. Netanyahu believes that war is his guarantee to stay in power.
Now, you talk about Netanyahu wanting more time. The opposite seems to be the case for the United States. President Donald Trump seems to want to wrap this up as quickly as possible. So can you talk about the differing goals of the United States and Israel and whether that has soured relations, frankly, between the two sides?
Well, I think that if you look at the short term, Netanyahu is able to brag that he is not only controlling the situation here in the Middle East, but he has also the upper hand in the international scene. That Netanyahu and Trump are actually working hand by hand. Trump is his best friend, and the Israelis really like it. Unlike I think many Europeans and even Americans who suspect that Trump is, not a very good strategist, the least to say, that he is acting on a whim. The Israelis admire him. They believe that he is the best president they ever had. But in the long run, Netanyahu actually has sold the Israeli interest for his own interest. And I believe that in the long run, the Arab countries who believe that Netanyahu can bring the American president to offer them an umbrella, a security umbrella, and an architecture that will make Israel the best asset vis-a-vis the United States. What they see now is that Netanyahu is becoming a burden for the American people and also for the Israeli people, and that the Abraham Accord that they were hoping that they will bring them more tranquility are not delivering.
Akiva Eldar, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.